So Exodus chapter 27, what we're going to do is begin going through this. I know we read one of these verses last week, or a couple of these verses last week. Let me get the... Okay, so chapter 25, verse 8 says, "Let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them." So we know the reason that God wanted, one of the purposes of building the tabernacle was so that God could dwell with us. Reviewing here, anybody have another reason why the tabernacle, God gave us the tabernacle? The purpose of the tabernacle. Yes?
My favorite is to dwell with his people.
Okay, so to dwell with his people, absolutely. All right, I'm excited. Somebody new answered one this morning, all right? All right, Miss Jamie. A shadow of the cross, or a shadow of Christ as well. And third one, reveals to us more about what? Okay, salvation. Yeah, Mr. Marvin? Sin, okay, yes. We talked about one more. Yes.
The better understanding of the Trinity.
The Trinity. So the third one would be understanding the Trinity. All right, and then we'll go into the idea of why it's important for us to study the tabernacle. Reasons why we should study the tabernacle. Yes.
It creates peerless images in our mind of Jesus Christ.
All right, gives us peerless images of Jesus Christ in our mind, helps us better understand who he was and what he's done for us. Something else here. Try to get a few of these every week. But remember another reason why it's important for us. All right, you got to share it with somebody next to you that hasn't answered yet. There we go. Come on now. Don't be shy. There's no reason to be shy. All right, it tells us what God wants us to meditate on. Very good. See, and she didn't even crumble. She did a really good job on that. All right, another reason why it's important for us, how many thousands of years later, to study the tabernacle?
The amount of space in the Bible.
The amount of space in the Bible, absolutely. All right. All right, couple other ones here if you want to jot them down, so those people got those covered. Next week, maybe you could jump in one. All right, it gives a believer illustrations to remind us what's important. Remember, I've referenced this a number of times. Sermon without illustrations is like a room without windows. And so God gave us one here to help us understand, sheds light on the gospel. And then as we grow as a Christian in Christ, we comprehend more more lessons from the tabernacle. And then the last one we had was it reminds us that God's people need to be teachers. All right, who was the builder of the tabernacle? The builder of the tabernacle. Anybody remember his name? Bezalel. Bezalel. So we had Bezalel. Anybody remember the other name? I think it's a little more difficult than Bezalel, but it is in there. I promise. That's where I got it from. Aholiab. And there was two other groups of people specifically pointed out that helped build the tabernacle. Better remember those. Anybody? Yes, Ms. Burke quizzed out on this question. All right. The other two are easy. The other two are... You got to tell the one on the far side that hasn't answered yet.
The faithful women?
All the women. All right, all the women. And the other one, there was a little more clause added to the other one. So we had all the women and the other one. Come on, somebody. We know what group of people it would be. Somebody give me that. If they covered the women. What's the men? Okay. And do we remember the phrase that was? All right, now you got to go in front of you. Now you got to give it to Miss Christina in front of you, trying to get a variety of answers.
The wise-hearted.
The wise-hearted men, okay? So it did give specifics on the men there. All right, just have a little bit of fun there. But I hope long-term that this kind of gives you a little bit more remembrance as to what we need to know. So the pictures this morning, it's not like they're from any specific, hey, this is exactly what it looked like. I'll tell you this morning, I used AI to give me, you can type in exactly what you want and it pretty much gives it to you. So I'm not saying that the front of the tabernacle looked like an Indian blanket. the gate there. I'm not saying, but it's just to kind of give us a reference, an idea through these pictures of what we're looking at this morning. So using Exodus chapter 27, verse number 8 through 18, I'm not going to read down through all of them, but before we start, so that we all understand, I will give you both the dimensions as far as the term used in the Bible would be cubit. So we all understand and are on the same page, maybe a trivia question down the road. A cubit is considered in today's dimensions about 18 inches. So I don't know, apparently they didn't have feet back then that they could just say we're going to measure by a foot. But I don't know, everybody changes measurements. You have centimeters and all of that to English and metric, and this is Bible. So the Bible terms would be cubit, and they're considered today about 18 inches. So I'll try to give you both of them just so that you can see the numbers as well as have an estimate of the space. So here in verse 8 through 18, we're going to see the court mentioned, which would be the area, this area here outside. It's called the outer court, and this is surrounded by tent walls. You see the walls there mentioned, and it was approximately 100 cubits or 150 feet, which in today's measurements, that would be about a half a football field. Football field's about 300 feet, 100 yards, and this was 150 by 50 cubits wide, so 150 feet long, 75 feet wide. The curtain walls, and we're going to get into this here in a couple weeks. I'm kind of excited. It's hard to imagine in my mind that God gave us this, and even down to the curtain walls, there are lots of illustrations and applications for us as Christians, but these walls were about 7.5 feet high. So 5 cubits, 7.5 feet high. So obviously the average man is not able to just walk up and look over. It was obviously blocking their view. And they hung on 60 pillars that were around the outside of this. So I would tend to believe this is a little bit more what it looked like. I don't think it was as colorful as we would like to think it was until you get inside. And I don't want to open up applications that I'm going to apply later. But again, this would be pretty much what the outer court would look like. You have in Exodus chapter 27, verse number 14, we get down through verse 16, where we talk about the gate. And the gate, the interesting thing about the gate is there's only one gate into the court. So real quick, think about this idea of, again, this is obviously a little bit more fancy of walls and such, but this would actually probably be a little bit more of what it would look like in the temple once they get permanent in in Jerusalem. But just real quick, make sure our mind is working here with the idea of the tabernacle and there being one gate. Does that jump any applications out to anybody? All right. I got one. Anybody else see an application on the, what's that? Okay, all right, represents God. The idea of there being one gate, one way, there we go. There's only one way. So even in a simple idea of the gate into the tabernacle, God gives us lots and lots of application for us. So the gate, though, was supposed to be on the east side of the tabernacle, east side of the court. It was made of 4 pillars and had a curtain that was 20 cubits, which would be 30 feet long. All right, that's a rather large curtain that we're talking about here. When you go into the tabernacle, when you walk through that gate, you're going to, sorry, I got a little bit behind myself, I guess there. Okay, so when you walk through the gate here, obviously this is having the 4 pillars. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, walking into there. But once you walk into that, you're going to come immediately into the brazen altar, or the altar of sacrifice. When they got to Jerusalem and built the tabernacle, the altar of sacrifice had steps up to it, and this altar was made of wood. Problem with wood, an altar is going to burn. So the whole thing was covered with brass. That's why it was called the brazen altar, or the altar of sacrifice. It was about 7.5 feet tall, 5 cubits, 7.5 cubits or 5 feet square, and then 3 cubits high, so 4.5 feet high. It had horns on all 4 corners, and the sacrifices, so which side of the court was the gate on? The east side. So you come into the tabernacle, and on the north side of the altars where they would kill the sacrifice. So you wouldn't walk in and see the sacrifice being killed. It would be on the north side. God goes all the way down to specifying where they should kill the sacrifices. We see that in Leviticus chapter 1, verse number 11. Now, on the east side of the altar was where the ashes were to be placed. So when you walk into the tabernacle, I don't know if they had a pot, I don't know exactly how they did that, but that's where the ashes would be kept right when you come in. Then as you continue in there, in front of the entrance to where the actual holy place was, we'll get to that in a minute, was the laver. This was a brazen laver. Again, it was made out of brass, and it was specifically for the purpose of washing. Before the priest would go into the holy place, they would have to come and wash themselves in the laver there. We find that in Exodus chapter 30, verse number 17 through 21. So now we get into what we would consider more the tabernacle. This is kind of blown up a little bit just so that you can see more of it. But you have the holy place is what we would call this. This would be the inside. So you had the court area that was 150 feet by 75 feet. But this is the tent, if you want to call it that, that's inside there. And this would be 45 feet long, or 30 cubits by 10 feet wide, or 15 feet wide, and 15 feet tall. So the outer court walls were 7.5 feet high, and then you had the holy place was another 7.5 feet wide, or tall, 15 feet in height. And this, okay, so when you get into this inner holy place, there's going to be more specifics that God gives to them. He actually gives them that this needs to be made of boards that were covered with gold. And for those that are, well, I don't go into the thickness of them, but they were 15 feet high and they were 2.5 feet wide. All right, specific measurements that God gives to them. There was to be no seams in them. They had to be boards of wood. So think about them. Where are they at when they're building this? In the wilderness. Think about the board. They've got to get boards, and they don't have the lumber yard to go get boards from that are 10 feet long at least and 2.5 feet wide. This is going to take some work for them to get. All right, and then there was a total of 48 of them. And each board, when they put them up, you say, how did they hold them all together? There was 2 sockets that were made for each board, made out of silver, that they would sit right down in. Obviously, they would come together. In Exodus chapter 26, we actually see obviously this is not how the tabernacle looked. It wasn't a square. This is kind of propped out so that you can kind of see. Tried to give you a cross section of what the roof would look like. So the roof was made of 4 cloth coverings. You find this in Exodus chapter 26, verse 1 through 14. So the top, so the top one, let me see here. Okay, those are mixed. Oh, I get what it is. So I told them give me cross section. So some reason they gave me them switched. So this would actually be the inner one, or the outside one. The outside one. All you would see on the outside, I didn't even notice that till just now that those are backwards. The outside one would actually be badger skin. Badger skin to me doesn't look that pretty. It's just dark brown. That's all you would see. Again, it's 15 feet high. You could probably see over the wall, over the curtain wall, and see that, but you're not going to look at that and say, wow, that's just a beautiful work of art. It was made of badger skin. The one right underneath the badger skin in Exodus 26, verse 14, the third one in was Sorry, I'm all confused now. My brain just got really fried because I saw that was backwards there. So the outside would be badger skin. Underneath that badger skin would be ram skin that was dyed red. Now, that's a process. Rams are not typically red. They had to go through the process of dyeing this to the color that they needed. Then underneath that ram skin that was dyed red, the next one would be made of goat's hair. And then the inner one, which would be the walls so the priest enters into the holy place. From the outside, you see the brown. From the inside, he would see it was a linen covering, but in the linen, it was intertwined with blue, purple, and scarlet. So all these different colors. And in that, there was cherubims that were engraved on the walls. So when you, again, this is what was seen from the inside. So, just to throw it out there real quick, we'll come back to this. From outside, you look in and there's nothing that exciting. But when you get into it, it's beautiful. Do you see the picture of salvation? From the outside, it's just salvation. I don't know why I need that. Or fellowship with God. No big deal. But when you get inside, you realize how beautiful it actually is. So a lot of these different things that God is putting some pictures together for us to understand. When you walk into the tabernacle or into the holy place, again, there's one curtain to enter into the holy place. That was also on the east side. You're going to come in, and there's going to be two rooms, if we could say that, compartments. When you come directly in, you're in what's called the holy place. On the second room, the further room in, would be called the Holy of Holies. And so when we break this down, this whole area, the holy place, the Holy of Holies, is called the sanctuary. The whole thing's called the Tabernacle. Now we've come into the sanctuary, and we're going to see in this Holy of Holies, it's in the holy place. There we go. Let's go there. The holy place, you're going to see a number of different things, 3 different things specifically that are in here. You're going to see the table of showbread. You're going to see the altar of incense, and you're going to see the golden candlestick. So as we come in, you see the table of showbread. This would be an absolute spectacular view. You have the walls that have the red, blue, and purple with angels intertwined or woven into them. Then you have the table of showbread. It's made of wood, but it's completely covered with gold. So now we're in the sanctuary. Everything outside the sanctuary was covered in brass. Come inside, it's covered with gold. It was 3 feet long, 2 cubits, 3 feet. I went here, and it's probably like here. All right, 3 feet long, 2 cubits, and 1.5 feet wide, 1 cubit wide, and 1.5 cubits tall. So when I always growing up, when I thought of the table of showbread, I think, it's one of the 6-foot tables, regular height, but we're talking about not that far off the ground, right? It's not a huge table. It's not a massive place. It's located on the north side of the room, so you come in the east. From the east, you go, I guess the north would be over here, all right? So on the north side would be the table of showbread. On this table, the priests were supposed to continually keep this prepared with 12 loaves on it. Any idea what the 12 loaves would represent? The 12 tribes. There we go. Okay. All right. But it was specifically told 2 rows with 6 in each row. So I tried like 14 different times to get 2 rows with 6 in each row. And this was the only picture that only had 12. All the rest I had rows, squares. It gave me all different numbers, but apparently, I could not figure out what 2 rows of 6 in each row meant, except for this one. So, all right. So on this side would be the table of showbread. On the other side, on the south side, you would find the golden candlestick. I think we kind of understand a little bit of what this would have looked like. It was made of solid gold. Again, there on the 7 candles on it on the left side when the priest walked in. The only other thing in this front room would be the incense altar. I don't know exactly what the incense altar looked like. So this is just what came up with it. I'm not saying this is anything of what it looked like. I'm not sure. All right, but I do know this. It was made of wood. It was completely covered with gold. It stood it was 1.5 feet square and was about 3 feet tall. And right behind this would be the veil into the Holy of Holies, which we're going to talk about here in just a minute. But the veil into the Holy of Holies was even more beautifully intertwined with these colors than the side walls. And so when the priest would walk in, he would be looking straight ahead at the altar of incense covered with gold, with the veil behind, and the other 2 pieces on the other side, on the sides. What an absolute beautiful picture to walk in. The veil that is here is again made with fine linen interwoven with blue, purple, and scarlet thread, and the images of the cherubims. It was between the Holy of Holies and the holy place and the Holy of Holies. Only the high priest himself could go beyond that curtain. Nobody else was allowed to go beyond that. When we get to the tabernacle, that's when God distinguishes how thick it's supposed to be. And it's actually about the width of a man's hand was the thickness of the curtain once it got into the tabernacle. Obviously, here it was not that way. But when you think about that, then when Jesus Christ dies on the cross, the Bible says that the veil in the temple was rent from top to bottom. That was obviously no man would be able to rip that. Only God could rip that. Could tear it from top to bottom. All right, so we enter into the Holy of Holies, and there's only one thing there. Well, what's in the Holy of Holies? The Ark of the Covenant. All right, multiple different ways that maybe you would think this looks like. It gives us images. It's a 2.5 cubit rectangular box, so 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide. So 3 3/4 feet long, 2 1/4 wide, 2 1/4 high. We find this in Exodus chapter 25, verse 10 through 15. Let me look over here. All right, this was made of gold. Both inside and out had to be covered in gold. And what was included inside it? There was 3 things inside it. We had a pot of manna, the tablets with the 10 Commandments. I don't think it said 10 Commandments on top in English. I don't think it was quite like that. But for us to have the picture there. And then Aaron's rod, obviously a rod, a shepherd's staff is dead, but a miraculous thing, it budded. And so that was also placed in there. God told them to do so. We also see that in Hebrews chapter 9, verse 4. And then on top of the mercy seat, so again, I'm not sure exactly how this was, but somewhere there, either on top of the cherubims or between the cherubims, because the Bible talks about the cherubims were over the mercy seat. So it could have been like this. It could have been all one piece. But basically above the Holy of Holies, above the Ark of the Covenant was what was called the mercy seat. All right, above the lid of the Ark of the Covenant, the lid itself was specifically said to be made of solid gold, and there was to be carvings of cherubims that were facing inward, and their wings were covering the mercy seat. You say, what do you mean by the mercy seat? That would be the place where we say God wanted to dwell with his people. That was the very place where God would come and his presence would dwell with his people. We find that in chapter 25 and verse number 22. All right, and when they first set the tabernacle up, they brought the Ark of the Covenant in. They set it in there. That is the place where the presence of God, the glory of God came and dwelt there. All right, no one went into the Holy of Holies except for the high priest. And he only went in there once a year to make atonement. And what he would do when he came in is he would bring the blood from the sacrifice and he would sprinkle it on the corners and over the mercy seat. That once a year on the Day of Atonement. The tabernacle was designed to be portable so that it could be transported during Israel's wanderings. There was rings on the outside, on the sides of it, they had poles that could be placed in it. Remember, nobody was allowed to touch the Ark of the Covenant, but they could put poles through there, and the priest could carry it on their shoulders from place to place. So all of these things that were given here for the tabernacle it's a portable sanctuary. Obviously, there's a lot of weight that we're talking about, though. So anything that was portable that could be carried would have rings put on it so they could carry it. The heavier items, such as the boards and the pillars and the sockets, were carried on wagons. We see that in Numbers chapter 7. But the Ark of the Covenant, it specifically was, the Bible tells them that they have to carry that. All right, so we did a real quick rundown through just the details as far as the blueprints, the measurements, things like that of the tabernacle. And I just want to close with these thoughts here. How does this apply to us? Well, think about it. If God had this detailed of a plan for a building, a place where he wanted to dwell, how much more detailed was his plan when he thought of you? He's gone through every aspect of your life, and he's put it out. It's exactly planned. He has a blueprint in your life for your friends. He has a blueprint for your family, for your job, for your schooling, for your ministry, for your marriage. Every detail concerning our life, he already has planned out. We just need to follow his plan. The tabernacle was built in God's specific plan, so likewise our lives should be built to God's specifications. I think about that song we sing with the kids. We sang it this week too, of the wise man built his house upon the rock. The foolish man built his house upon the sand. But the last verse says, so build your life on the Lord Jesus Christ. All right, we don't seek God's will like customers who look at options, but like servants who listen for orders.